All right, welcome back to Resilient Voices and Beyond. I believe this is episode 5 that will be coming out. It's been a journey. It's truly been a journey. Started this journey January 7th of this year, released season 1. Truly did not expect to be released in season 2 within the same year, but the work it has been great. There's been a lot of support. And I've seen that this is needed, this space, to educate and just support people and just uplift those stories and those expertise, and for the betterment of child welfare, but also for the betterment of individuals that are in care right now. To be able to hear people who have resilient voices in all different shapes and sizes, and knowing that there's no one unique way to be successful or to thrive. Thriving and being successful looks different in all shapes and sizes. But I can ramble on. You guys know I can talk. I am so excited for this episode. This man is just a wonderful individual. I've had the opportunity to meet him more recently and get a little scope of his background, but I'm gonna let him introduce himself, and we're gonna dive deep into it and just have a wonderful episode and conversation.
Great. Mike, how you doing? Thank you for having me on. For our listeners, my name is Lindsay Huddleston II. I am with Michigan's Children. I am a policy advocate. My background includes being a high school teacher and coach, working in public schools as a student support specialist, using my master's in sports psychology in particular, but psychology to address issues of mental health and mental toughness amongst youth, as well as amongst other individuals that we're dealing with. My role with Michigan's Children allows me to use my background in the political process after being Deputy Director for Legislative Affairs for Governor Jennifer Granholm and her administration, working with members of the House on seeing legislation being passed, and leveraging relationships, and later lobbying in the corporate world for Walmart, as well as Students First. And just really taking my background and skill set, my passion to help young people to the next level as it relates to public policy. And this role with me with Michigan Children has given me a great opportunity to bring all those skills to bear. We have a great team being led by Matt Giller as well. And I'm just happy to be here and being able to share.
Awesome. And I know there's some great work that Michigan Children is getting ready to work on and work towards. I'm going to touch on that a little bit later. But what I like to do is kind of, when I'm interviewing people and talking with them and having this conversation, is kind of get a little bit of who you are and what your journey has been, and then work my way to your expertise. So you mentioned that you've been around the block, and I'm pretty sure that journey has not been easy, and I would love to hear, what has been your why and how did this start for you, from education to sports, to sports to politics, to all that you have endeavored. If you can walk us through that journey.
Sure, man. Great question. I like the way you put that there. I'm a native Detroiter, proud native Detroiter. I grew up on the west side of Detroit, 7 Mile Evergreen area. Went to Henry Ford High School. If it wasn't for my immediate community, I probably wouldn't be where I am right now. I talk about growing up on Fielding Street on the west side of Detroit, and my mom, as a single mom, raising my brother and I. My brother Sean, he passed due to health conditions some 10 years ago. But it was that neighborhood that we grew up in, and those young men that I grew up with. And I often say that the alumni in my sandbox are murderers, drug dealers, and college graduates. I'm sure you can relate to that. And it was because those young guys that I grew up with who were a little bit older than me that I looked up to and I was influenced by, because that's what happens when you're a young person. Fortunately, their goal was to go to the YMCA and play basketball and, win as many games as possible, crack jokes, get to know the girls and get their parents to like them. So I just followed suit. And fortunately, I was with a group of young men who had some great ideas as far as what they want to do. It's not to say that the danger wasn't close by. I mean, we kind of stepped over that on our way in our daily travels, as I'm sure you understand. But also, there's another individual I want to recognize, Mr. Clark Jeffries, the late Clark Jeffries. He was a Wayne County sheriff, and he opened his house to all these young men. His door was never locked. His sons and stepsons were my contemporaries, and it was because we always had a place to go, a place to gather, a place to kind of get out of the way. I think that helped me a great deal. So going forward, Michael, it was really in high school with the support of great people like Melanie Nunn, my former English teacher, Mr. Ernest McCoy, who's almost like a father figure to me, with all due respect to my dad, Lindsay Huddleston, just really encouraging me from something as simple as running for homecoming king as a freshman and winning. Nobody ran against me. That's the other part. But still, to be able to run and win and find success and have what we all know to be confidence, and the confidence of knowing that I could do more than what was around me. Secondly, getting involved with student government at an early age was very influential in where I am right now. Later becoming class president, student council president, Detroit citywide student council president, and also coming to where my home is now, Lansing, some 30 years ago, to be elected youth governor of the state of Michigan. So from an early age, I was commissioned, if you will, to go out and do things that were in the best interest of my peers. Obviously, that translated. I had an internship with Mr. Dennis Archer, who's not only a frat brother, but a great mentor. So I was able to see city government from a certain perspective. Had a great internship in Washington, D.C. with the late Congressman John Conyers. So I was able to get a grasp of the federal government and how it worked. And just all these great experience built upon me, just taking on the idea of, Lindsay, let me take advantage of my experience and see how I can help somebody else. What good is it that I can find, great success and be in this ivory tower if from whence I came and the peers that I knew and grew up with are still struggling? And a quick example I give for that before we transition, I remember a very close friend of mine was having an issue at his job. And this is during the time I was in the Granholm administration, and never one to, throw my weight around or call and, intimidate people. But he was having an issue with an employer that I thought to be him being, taken advantage of. So I made a call to the necessary department and respectfully told them who I was and who I was calling on behalf of, but made sure not to press and say, if you don't do this, it's going to happen. But they looked into it. They found the discrepancy, the same discrepancy that I recognized, and they rectified it. So I say all that to say is, what good is it having power, influence, and insight if you can't use that for the betterment of others? And I think that's been the story of my life, what I will continue to focus on and do. And as I have my dreams, goals, and aspirations, being able to be with a great organization like Michigan's Children and bring all my skills to bear to help others who are less fortunate means that I'm living in my purpose.
Awesome. I'm just taking in all that you just said there. You dropped a lot of nuggets.
There was a lot there, huh?
You dropped a lot of nuggets, and it's awesome. If you don't mind me saying, it's awesome to just see, because I didn't see a lot, and I'm just gonna be straightforward with the audience and everything. I didn't see a lot of Black men making it out of Detroit. I spent a good part of my side on the west side and east side of Detroit growing up before my child welfare experience, and it wasn't a lot of happy ending stories. Much like you said, in that sandbox, a lot of people, even from being in with my birth family and then even transitioning into care, because a lot of people I was in care with was from Wayne County and what have you. Unfortunately, they're not here today, or they're locked up, and it's really disheartening, but it's always, reassuring that there is a path. We all have to choose that path, and we all have to, take on the mantle to persevere and be resilient, and that doesn't mean that it's gonna, hurt. It isn't gonna hurt. That doesn't mean that there isn't going to be barriers. But it also speaks to the testament when community comes together. We can flourish. And that's a big part of the advocacy that I do now is, bringing community back. in the forefront with, the human service work in the child welfare arena. But I appreciate you highlighting that and pointing that out, but also speaking to, bringing the seat to the table, taking those opportunities, because I'm pretty sure, because you can probably speak to a little bit more of this throughout that journey of stepping out. There probably was some things in your head, saying, am I supposed to be here, or is this what I'm supposed to be doing, and what have you. But you continue to persevere through that, so that's really awesome to hear. Before we transition forward, because I want to be able to get a sense of your journey in all aspects. What did mental health look like for you in that spread gap, of working towards that internship, getting into these opportunities, being young and seeing that, what did that look like for you in the aspect of those transitions?
That's a great question. Mental health probably has become, most prominent as a term within the last 5 years or so. So when we talk about mental health, as far as my transition from day one to now, it was probably more about mental toughness. Some would even define it as grit. It's that city life. It's just growing up hard. And, as any child, you grow up and the hope is that you can keep your innocence as long as possible. I have a 10-year-old daughter, and my goal is to keep her and allow her to keep her innocence as long as possible. But as you and I both know, it's very easy for that innocence to be taken away. So early on, I had a belief in myself that I was supposed to win early on. It didn't mean I wouldn't have obstacles, didn't mean I wouldn't have challenges. And I credit my mother as a single parent raising my brother and I at the time, a great example. And I thought about this before I came on your show. Something that was really a life-changing moment for me early on as a teen, not even a teen. I mean, I probably was in single digits. Every kid loves ice cream, right, Michael? So I see the ice cream truck and I told my mother, I had an epiphany. I said, Mom, I got an idea. I know what I want to do. I want to work on the ice cream truck when I get older. Because my thought is if I work on the ice cream truck, I get access to all the ice cream. Genius idea, right? Right? But my mother, God bless her for responding the way she did. And it was a life-changing statement, even that I can recall it to this day, 40 years later. She said, no, baby, you want to own the company. And when she said that, so many things took place. One, it made me say that I can own a company and still have ice cream, but let me take my mindset away from being a worker to being an owner. And no knock on anyone who's working. We're all working in some capacity, but she allowed me then to see beyond what I saw. And that mindset has stayed with me. And I always look at things from the standpoint of, how can we get the most out of it? And also looking from the standpoint that I'm here to win. I just have to go through the process to figure out how to do it. It's not to say it's going to be easy, but I do believe that I'm here to be successful. And I try to instill that in everyone I come in contact with. So as it relates to mental health, it really is about what do I have to do to be able to persevere through this sad situation, whether it's returning to school. My freshman year, I went away to college, to Morehouse College. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. went there. So many great individuals have gone and still continue to go to school there, but it was just too much money for my mom as a single parent. And being a first generation college student, go away, I didn't even know what cost was. So after that first year, when I came home, Michael, and she said, unfortunately, you can't go back, I was devastated. But that was my first, true understanding of mental toughness and also mental health, because it really negatively affected me. Probably because I had a girlfriend down in Spelman that I was trying to get back to my girlfriend. But it was the whole idea of also learning what socioeconomic status I was. When I went away as a freshman leaving, Detroit, I remember that summer, me and my good friend, he actually was the vice president of my senior class, Quantrell Trop. We were in downtown Detroit, and we were amazed because we saw a car we had never seen before. It was the first edition of the Lexus Coupe. So you can imagine how sleek and cool it was and how we were there. And I remember an older gentleman who was a real estate guy came and talked to us and was very positive, saying, hey, you can get this too. Well, fast forward, within a few months, I get to campus. There's a freshman on campus with a Lexus Coupe. So I'm like, whoa. So I'm like, oh, okay, I see the difference between socioeconomic status. However, as you can understand too, based on my upbringing, never would socioeconomic status stop me from believing in the person who I was, what I could achieve. So I would say from an early age, growing up in the streets of Detroit, knowing how to navigate and be able to kind of maintain, knowing the drug dealer, knowing the murderer, knowing all these people and being able to, as I put it straight, you have a relationship with them where they'll say, oh, that's Lenny. He's pretty much a civilian. We can crack jokes with him. We can hang out with him. Or somebody may even far as go and say, you better not mess with him because that's my guy. And that may be the same person you will see on the 10 o'clock news committing a heinous act. And it's hard for our community to explain that to the masses. In many cases, they see this and they run with it and they think it has to be a negative thing, but that's just what it is growing up. So I would say being able to be the man I am right now, being able to be a resource to people who are in need, being able to walk with my head up and connect with all people, no matter what their station in life, has been a key as it relates to me keeping positive mental health. But I tell you what, as a Black man in America, man, it's hard to keep your head up and walk straight because society is not responding to us in a way. So when I get into the work that I'm doing with Michigan's Children, a great organization that's looking at being able to assist Black and brown individuals who are marginalized and to be able to have support from a great team that's diverse in background and knowledge to be able to support these issues, is a great feeling because I don't feel that I am on, how should I say, being watched to the point where everyone's watching my every move for the sake of watching my every move compared to saying, hey, Lindsay, you bring great things to the table here. Let's utilize all that to do something for the betterment of young people going forward. And that's what my experience has been with Michigan's Children. And that's how I would define mental health in 2022 right now.
Thank you for that. You touched on so many great points. And I hope, for the listeners, just taking those in, whichever, if it all was relevant to you, if something really significantly stuck out to you or what have you, I just hope that you take that in and receive that, but also for those, that work in this field and what have you, just, reflect on it. We talk about as the state of Michigan is doing a lot of changes and reforms in the aspect of child welfare and even in legislation at a federal level and state level, as far as prevention, preservation, and just reform and stuff like that. And also, highlighting that, in marginalized communities, Black and brown individuals or minorities and what have you, and stuff like that, even though, Lindsay just spoke upon, he had some supports, he had community. That's not everyone's story, and stuff like that. And he still went through different things and stuff like that. So when we think about things in this aspect of work, when it comes to child welfare, it's really important that you understand the community that you're working for. You take time to understand the culture and the heritage so you can do your best for that community and for that individual, so just, do your homework. I promise you, it won't hurt. It'll only help. But transitioning into now your expertise and your work with Michigan Children, some great things are happening. So first, I don't know if everybody know what Michigan Children is. So let's start there. What is Michigan Children? What is this thing we've been talking about and mentioning?
Sure. The simplest way I can describe Michigan Children is being a statewide independent voice, working to ensure that public policies are made in the best interest of children from cradle to career. I mean, you have an organization that's set up and has a great history of some 20 plus years in the state of Michigan of being known as a great group that advocates for young people. And I experience that daily when I'm downtown Lansing or coming in contact with people who are part of the umbrella of, helping children move forward. There's a great reputation. In my particular role, leaning on my legislative background, leaning on my, those things and my work with public policy, I'm able to kind of bring those things together and kind of be the liaison to the legislature. You and I have talked offline about one of the things we're focused on right now is creating new legislation that will provide a tuition waiver for young people impacted by the foster care system in the state of Michigan. Some 22 states throughout the country already have this. Michigan doesn't. So it's not so much just about drafting the words. It's really about getting, great, stakeholders like yourself and others who can kind of get the word out, but also getting legislative champions who are willing to step into the House and the Senate chambers, put their name on that blue back for that bill and stand up and advocate for this group of individuals. We always have budget challenges and constraints. And to be honest, when you start getting into the tuition waiver world, you're dealing with a very small percentage in comparison to, the large numbers that other people are focused on. But it's a group that can be impacted. It's people like yourself, Michael, who've had these experiences and you're touching lives every day. So it's very important that the type of champions that we get to come on board to support the tuition waiver legislation are individuals who have a visionary mindset. Because it's so easy when you're in the legislative space to get caught up in just the X's and the O's and just really just focusing on what the numbers are compared to what the impact can be. So we're very interested in looking at the new group of legislators that are coming in, also responding to some of the current legislators who, worked on great things. So our hope is that, to be able to connect with you and the like and get this message out to say, hey, Michigan Children's working on a great thing. Other organizations who think this is a great idea, they can get behind us and support. Also, just getting legislators and other champions to say, hey, this is something that's important. We want to do it. There are tuition waivers for those who are indigenous in the sense of being part of the Native American population. There's also tuition waivers for survivors, individuals whose parents were firefighters or police officers who lost their lives in the line of duty. So there is an opportunity to give, educational support to individuals who have been impacted by some life experiences that they really have no control over. So we're looking forward to that being a primary issue for us going into January 2023 when the new legislature is seated.
Awesome. For me, and I'm gonna break that down a little bit because I got some questions for you in there.
Sure.
But for me, in the state of Michigan, things are financial, and the scope of things and stuff like that. But I've always understood and always looked at when it comes to foster care, when it comes to adoption, when it comes to child welfare, it's a very bipartisan, issue and what have you. For me, when I think of tuition waiver for these individuals who unfortunately have suffered in some aspect of trauma, I think about how many people, how many citizens and what have you that we could provide education to, provide a pathway to, provide a choice in the long run to be able to help better our economy and put more equity out there. We're in a state of inflation. That's no secret. Gas prices were just $5 and different things like that. And we a lot of people is wondering what the future may hold. But when we look at the numbers of how many people experience foster care or some essence of being in a child welfare system, that's a really high number, and we think about how many of those people are actually following through with college, how many of those people are, becoming law-abiding citizens and stuff like that. If we could provide free education to all those individuals or an option for free education, what would that look like in the whole sense of our state and our nation?
Significant. That'll be really significant. We know that education is, unlocks so many opportunities, and people can make the argument that, oh, I'm not even using what my degree is in. Yeah, it could be an argument made for that, but the process of being educated and getting a degree shows the world that you're educable, but also is a reminder to oneself that you're able to accomplish many things. Sometimes when, I get down on myself, I have to remind myself of the things that I've done to help me with the next scenario going forward. That's kind of going back to the mental health piece that we talked about before. So for those who try to downplay, the impact that education has, I'll say, tell me that, after you get it, and at least give someone else an opportunity to be able to get that and do that and go forward. And it's just a game changer. And to your point, to be able to provide that resource to those who've been negatively impacted by things that they have had no control over, I think is the least we can do as a state. And lastly, because there's always another side to it, there's always particularly a conservative element about, fiscal spending and things like that. When we give people opportunity to be successful. Though there may be a cost up front, the overall cost is lessened because that's less individuals who are required to be on the public roads. That's less individuals who, need state aid. That's less individuals who will be non-tax paying citizens in society. So we have to have a broader view, and I'll go back to that same statement of, a visionary type view of what this can do. You and I know what education does for Black and brown communities in particular. So why not do the best we can and give people these opportunities to pull themselves out of this situation to find success and a great quality of life going forward.
Definitely, definitely. And I appreciate you stating that. This is great work, much needed. Personally, for me, I've seen states, I believe Florida has a tuition waiver. And some other states and stuff like that, I've seen it, and spoke with other alumni that have been able to utilize this, and it's great. It's an opportunity, and it's a choice. People like myself, I didn't have foster homes. I wasn't adopted. Going back to my birth family wasn't really a viable option for safety and for my mental health. But I spent most of my time in residentials until 18. And I graduated, and immediately was like, what am I going to do? College was the only way I saw a future, and for me personally, we spoke off of this. Initially, college was just a means to an end for me. Being very transparent, it was a very big means to an end, but also for me, that experience starting out in college was very eye-opening. I eventually left college, but now I'm back in college. But the option of being able to go, I don't know where I would be. I don't know where I would be. My initial intentions, going in there, it was like, look, you said there's money involved. I can get a refund. I can have a place to stay. I don't know what I'm gonna do, but this is what I got right now, and I'm figuring out as I go, and I know for other people that may be different, but in the state of Michigan right now, unfortunately, a lot of people aren't going to placements. A lot of people are aging out of these placements. And unfortunately, because our numbers of foster homes and, more so teen homes aren't really there, what path is there outside of what I've even heard doing peer support and different things throughout the state? I guess, well, you aged out. Unfortunately, there's nowhere else for you to go. And the homeless shelter or the streets is that option after 18. Not saying for everybody, but it's a reality that is happening. The opportunity to further yourself, the opportunity to have, a place, a room and board. And unfortunately, some people educationally, we barely made it, and if you like me, I barely made it through high school. So community college was great. I got the refund to be able to afford housing, and that's a big percentage of us too. Like a lot of us, we skated by high school, so we got to go to community college to get to the university, but the benefit of it all, in the wider sense, what we were talking about before, it's life-changing, and I can't speak enough about having that choice. I think about going back to Detroit. My parents could not afford college. That wasn't going to be ever a viable option. And I can't even imagine where I would be. Foster care wasn't the greatest. It wasn't. I endured more trauma in the foster care system. But coming out on the brunt end, if I did not go to college, I don't know where I would be. I don't know if this podcast will be here, and it really was a starting point for me going to that next level within myself. It taught me a lot of life lessons, and, I'm being completely transparent. I dropped out of college, but I got back in. And it was that option that saved my life, So I wanted to share that little piece, and
if I can just add to that, as you sit here and tell the story, I appreciate your vulnerability. There's power in that. Also, too, what you're saying to me, I can understand, but it's people who can listen to this podcast or people who can hear this message, and they can be oblivious to the fact and say, well, why was college not an option for your family? Why couldn't your parents just take their savings and pay? Why couldn't, why would they not want you to get the same education that they may have had? And it may sound so simple, but there are two different worlds as it relates to what experiences are. I mean, the things you're talking about, just being able to make sure you got a refund so you can have somewhere to stay. Well, someone may say something as simple as, well, I can just take my parents home. I mean, if you really want to get into it, we can talk about how, minorities weren't even able to get home loans to be able to get the homes to eventually be able to pass on to someone else, to get equity out of, to be able to use for things like furthering your college education. So there's a whole system in place that we're kind of fighting against. So with that being said, I don't want to make light of what you shared, not because it's just your personal story, but it's because it's such a contrast for how so many people live their lives. And I'll go as far as to say how decision makers, legislative leaders live their life, to where that's not them talking about something they've experienced, only from what they've heard. And until that message is pounded and put in their face enough to say, hey, people are living different lives out here, that's what's going to take for them to make the right kind of decisions to affect the change that we're talking about.
Definitely. I want to, before we get ready to close out, I want to just reiterate, you're getting ready to, push this work out for this tuition waiver and do some work. How important is it to have people with lived experience on the table with this working?
Oh, it's very important. Now, right now, some of the other work we're doing at Michigan Children, we're doing candidate forums throughout the state of Michigan. We may have 10 to a dozen before the November election, which is right around the corner. And just recently, my colleague Terry, who and I, we were with a great group of young people over at Peckham, locally in Lansing, that does a lot of great work with young people who are overcoming some challenges. And we were talking to them about, posing these questions to these legislators that will be coming in, and talking about the importance of them being the expert on the subject matter when they pose a question, not just saying, for example, how do you feel about, for example, Roe versus Wade, but talking about someone who experienced an abortion and what it may have done, for their household, someone who was contemplating that idea and how it impacted. I even had one young lady even talked about the fear of young girls being killed by the suitors because they don't want that person to have a child. So when you talk about these lived experiences, Michael, I think you're absolutely right. We have to remind people that they are experts on this subject matter based on the lived experience. The first thing we'll do when it comes to dealing with someone who's in a position of power or authority, we'll just give to that power and authority with the assumption that because they're in that role, they know all that is correct and right. However, when you come with this lived experience, as my godfather Ernest McCoy would tell me, I'm not telling you what I heard, I'm telling you what I know. You can stand on that. Those are the type of things lived experience allow you to speak truth to power, because you are saying, I'm speaking of who I am as a person, what my life has been. So as we get out the word and try to get individuals like yourself, individuals who are listening to this great message, who can bring their stories, are very impactful, particularly in the legislative process when it comes down to committee hearings, when the legislation goes to a House committee and they have a hearing, a public hearing, and it's the people's business to come to be at the House chamber or the Senate chamber to be able to sit and tell their stories. And I think those are very, very important because they go into the record, they're shared, that people can go back and look at those. And it also gives the legislator some insight that they probably would not have had. It's not really right there in the words in the legislation, but it's that person like a Michael Davis Thomas who sits in front and tells their story that can really impact them and also impact change. So lived experience is a critical component. And I'm grateful that we have a platform like your podcast. I'm grateful that Michigan Children can leverage its relationship and its respectability to bring people to the forefront to tell their lived experience stories.
Definitely. I just want to, take a minute to just appreciate you being on here, appreciate, all the work that Michigan Children has done. I've been able to work with them a couple times and do a lot of different things from, Shadow Day that we've done a couple years back now to being able to talk about, the Chafee funding during COVID, getting legislators to release that funding to be able to supply stimulus to youth aged out of care, but also different services for YIT funding. It's been an awesome, relationship. And I implore you guys, if you have not really heard about Michigan Children until listening to this, to check it out, check out their website, check out their social media, and really, dive deep. If you have not even heard of, some of the things we've talked about, or, culturally, mental health wise, or what have you, take some time to reflect, educate yourself a little bit. We all have a stake in this, and that's a big thing that more and more that I learn and I grow, even though a lot of my stuff is centralized in child welfare, juvenile justice, criminal justice, in which I advocate for and doing different things like that. I've learned that one system does not, separate other people who have never had any experience from it. We all are tied to one another by one piece or another, and we all are part of this big village, so knowing about something, being informed is the best thing that you can do. Even if you're not out here advocating, even if you're not out here, doing this, that, and the third, if you're a parent, it's important, because you're passing that knowledge down. You're carrying that from carrying that to the next generation. So, just take some time to reflect if something in this that you probably have never heard of, or, thought of, or what have you, take some time, and just really think about it. If you're a family listening to this, have a family conversation, bring up those conversations. I'm a big person to promote it, let's talk about it. And it starts in the homes. That's how we can be better in breaking some of these generational things, these stigmas, these labels, and these narratives that are carrying on negatively throughout our society, by having these candid conversations about these things and more. Education does not just hit people that have lived experience in the child welfare system. Unfortunately, we spoke about it, minorities and people in Black and brown communities have a really hard time, and there is a huge disparity gap in understanding the barriers, that these people have to sacrifice to even make it to high school.
Right.
Let alone college, Right. So just, taking that time to really understand that and even empathize. So last couple things I have for you, any tips, tidbits, or advice that you would like to give. It could be towards any specific category of people or what have you, or in a general sense. What advice would you like to give us today?
Yeah, I'll finish with what we started at. We talked the other day. I love your format when you use quotes that impact people's lives. And the quote I shared was Nas. Why shoot the breeze about it when you can be about it? And what I mean by that is, we have this idea of what we may want in the world, but if you really take a step back, any and everything can be achieved through a process. That process may not be overnight. That process may not be quick, fast. So whether it's you achieving your goals from an educational standpoint, me in my capacity with Michigan Children with achieving a goal of a tuition waiver that can impact people, why shoot the breeze about it when you can talk, when you can be about it? Why just sit there and talk when you can really take a next step? But in many cases, that requires a different level of sacrifice. That requires a different level of commitment, and it just requires you to be about who you are. And then also, sometimes you can be, looked upon as you can get beat up over it, because you're carrying this burden. Why are you still working on that? Why are you talking about that? But I just really believe what I can leave behind for people is be inspired, and more importantly, you got to start with the win in mind. You got to start with the belief that you're supposed to win. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but starting with that belief allows the trail and the path that you go down to be a little bit more bearable, because you're saying, I'm supposed to win, so let me figure this out. But if you start from a negative standpoint, I'm not even supposed to win, how are you going to get out, out the block? So I just try to encourage individuals with that. I have to remind myself of that daily, and I'm just grateful for the things that was poured into me. And the last thing I also say, especially you talk about your experience growing up, and building community. Sometimes community may not be big. Community may consist of one person, and maybe that one individual, that one coach, that one parent, that one friend, hell, the one wino that say, "Hey man, don't do what I do," And I think what you have to do is you have to look for that. It may not always be there, and look is part of effort. So you have to put effort in to go forward. And with that being said, all I can say is just believe that you're supposed to win. Life is not supposed to be easy. It's an ebb and flow of ups and downs and all those things. But if you believe you're supposed to win, stay present in the moment. Right now, I mean, you and I are winning right now. We're on this podcast. We're having this conversation. We're sharing a message that can go out to 1 or 1 million people. And it really doesn't matter, because in this moment, we're finding success despite what's to come and what has happened. So I just want to, acknowledge you for all that you've done. You're an inspiration to me. I know that this won't be our last time connecting. I'm grateful for being in a position to be with a great organization like Michigan's Children and the work that we're working on every day. Specifically, Matt Gillett, our CEO, Vice President, Bobby Jones, Terry Bannis, who does all of our communications and does a great job with that. We got Maddie Elliott, as well as Stephen as well. I threw a blank on Stephen's name. He's gonna get me for that, but we can figure it out. And lastly, Kylie Montgomery, who's doing a great job as our admin. So I mean, that's the team that we rock with, and I'm grateful. We're always looking for new interns to come on board to do great things to help us out. So that's the one shout out I would definitely want to give as it relates to what's happening with Michigan's Children, and just having this great opportunity to be on board with you, man.
Awesome. And it's an honor. It's an honor and a privilege. I appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing, a piece of your life and also your expertise and your journey. Is really important. Nonetheless, that we speak up and uplift. And I, just being candid, men in this field and around this field, but also, Black men who have, came from Detroit and have been successful and not even just Detroit in general, but other urban environments and have made it forward. So I appreciate, you being that example for me, and for many others,
And it's Stephen Wallace. Before I forgot Stephen's name. I drew a blank on Stephen's name. That's my guy, Stephen Wallace. So that's the whole Michigan's Children's crew right there.
I appreciate it. And any last comments? Anything you would like to put out there?
You keep going. You keep working. I looked at the work that you're doing, even the pre-work, the post-edit work, and all that, and it can be very lonely. I understand, man, but keep going, keep pushing. I think the difficulty as humans, man, sometimes we just cannot see the forest for the trees. I know that's such a cliche, but when you're working, you say, man, is this thing even moving? But you got to look back from whence you came, and not just a week ago or 10 days ago, but you got to look back to a year ago. 5 years ago, where were you, and the thought you may have had of what you can do. So just keep working, keep pushing, man. And when it gets too heavy, just remember just to stay present in the moment. Because if you can win right now, if you can win the moment, you'll find success. They say that anxiety is defined as worrying about what hasn't happened, and depression is defined as worrying about what has happened. So the sweet spot is staying present in the moment, because all those things that we worry about, we don't even know if it's going to happen. And the things that have happened already is nothing we can do about it. So to you, Michael Davis Thomas is doing a great job with Resilient Voice and Beyond. Do not stop. And it's easier said than done, because when you don't get the congratulations, the attaboy, the pats on the back, this society is based off a financial system. So you don't see the financial rewards. It can be difficult, but man, you have to keep going. So my last words of encouragement is for you, don't stop, because what you're doing is making an impact.
Thank you, thank you. I truly appreciate that because this journey has not been easy. But it's something that I feel that I'm called to, and this is like I tell people all the time, this is my ministry, you know. So I take this mantle on and I continue to persevere, not only for myself, and not the self now, but the self in the past. But for those people that are still in the system and those coming out, you know. Um, well, last things I want to say, you guys heard it, there's going to be some work coming up, and stuff like that for you, people that are in campus-based support programs, and for those other alumni, advocates and leaders, and stuff like that. So tune in, I may be calling on you for some help and advocating for this tuition waiver, soon. So definitely tune into that, take this as a call to arms or what have you. But this is something that needs to happen. And also, take heed and looking in to Michigan children, as Lindsay spoke, there's internship opportunities and different things like that. So, if you're seeking an internship, you're seeking somewhere to really learn and flourish, and get a better sense of what's happening with children in the state of Michigan. That is a great place to, take a look at and think about doing an internship with. But also, they have a podcast too, and they do a lot of different virtual things. So, be sure to, check out their social media, check out some of the work that they're doing, and stay tuned because it's a lot of great things happening within the organization and so forth. Lastly, we brought up some things that could be potentially triggering to people. Mental health is important. I can't stress that enough that we're in a day and age where, we still have stigmas, we still have certain narratives culturally and sometimes even spiritually, when it comes to mental health, but I'm a firm believer that we all have some aspect of self-care within it that we need to do, whether it's self-reflection or some habits that need to be changed, so take some time, if something have triggered you within this episode, to really do some mindfulness, take a little step back to, debrief yourself and really, just relax and come back to baseline. It's all love here, all love and respect. And I want everyone to be able to listen to these episodes and be safe, mentally and physically and so forth. Outside of that, if anything in here, some of you are going through, reach out for help. If you do not know the resources or what have you, please reach out to me. Like I would help you, find whatever you need and what have you. And I know you guys are like, well, you ain't gonna answer your email, what have you, and so much people. I promise you, I will answer if you reach out to me because everybody need help, and unfortunately, I didn't have that help in my past, so I try to be that village or that support, that community, as we spoke, if I can, that's what I'm here for, and that's what, I'm not just putting this information out for my help, So if that's what you need, definitely reach out, but this has been a privilege being able to bring this yet again. It's been an honor. I would not be able to be here without you guys' support and just listening in. You guys study, with the downloads, they study keep increasing and just seeing that this is reaching far more than I ever thought. I just being completely honest, far beyond. But I appreciate it. And it's such an honor to know that this is helping and this is transforming, my state and also, different aspects of this nation. So thank you guys. And lastly, you guys have a good night, good morning, good whenever you listening to this. Just let it be good, great. And I'll talk to you guys soon. This has been Resilient Voices and Beyond. Thank you.